Hi, I'm Kenny Anderson, Director of Multicultural Affairs for the City of Huntsville, and welcome to Impact. Each week we bring you information about exciting things that are happening right here in the city, and today will be no different. Each week I have the privilege of coming to Education Television Studios, ETV, as it is mostly known throughout the city, that is directly affiliated with the Huntsville City School System. And what many people don't realize is that we have a state-of-the-art facility for television production right here on Montesano. That's not one of your traditional TV stations, like the big guys out there. I kind of think of ETV as a little guy that does things in big ways. Today we're going to be talking about the history of this great studio that's actually going to be celebrating an anniversary, the 50th, the golden anniversary of ETV. With me today is Keith Ward. He is Director of Communications and ETV. Welcome to the broadcast.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate the excitement here about it.
It's good to have you because I love anniversaries, whether it's a birthday anniversary or a wedding anniversary. This is a television production studio anniversary that really has a lot of significance in this community. And you've been a part of this now for how long?
Well, next by the summer of 2016, it'll have been 20 years, which to me seems just hard to believe that it's been that long. But yeah, 20 of the 50 years I will have been here at ETV.
Yeah, that's almost half of the time. So you, of course, as a part of any celebratory event, are going to have lots of things going on, and people can certainly look forward to that. But talk to me a little bit about the history of this studio, because it really has a kind of a long history with lots of things that have gone on. There have been lots of well-known people that have come through these studios and these halls. But talk a little bit about the history of this studio.
Well, it was set up in the summer of 1966, and it had a purpose to actually provide 4 channels of closed-circuit television to the schools in the district. So in the age of the 60s, when you didn't have the internet and Skype and all of these other resources, it was basically a way to do virtual classrooms before they had that term. And in addition to that, Alabama Public Television had wanted to have a transmitter here to cover this area and be able to broadcast their programming. So their production transmitter was also placed in this building. And we had a mutual agreement that ETV would actually provide some of the programming that would appear on the state public television network. And we supplied, on average, a few hours of that programming per day that would be switched out of our studio here and fed throughout the state.
Wow, that's very interesting in terms of that early genesis of the process, because it really kind of emerged out of a collaborative initiative. And collaboration is something that continues today because you have a partnership with Huntsville City School System. You have a partnership now with the Huntsville City as well. And so talk a little bit for us about how ETV tends to operate now as a function of the Huntsville City School System and what kind of programming can people find, and then kind of segue into the partnership that the City of Huntsville has that really allows us to do this show on a regular basis.
Well, one of the things we ventured into was getting a full-time cable access channel. And this happened on a parallel course with the city getting a full-time cable access channel. And that was many, many years ago. It doesn't seem like it, but it was actually in the late 1990s when that occurred. ETV was actually providing some programming to the local cable providers much earlier than that. We were doing school board meetings that dated back into the late 70s and early 80s. And then we also had a live call-in homework assistance show. And what would happen is the cable company had a cable access channel that was shared by many other resources. And we were just one of those resources. And when the cable company opted to actually broadcast the City of Huntsville meetings as well, then it was placed on that same channel. And oddly enough, what would sometimes occur is, because of holiday scheduling and so forth, you would have both the city council and the city school board on the same night. And we always got preempted for the city council meeting. So, you know, this lent itself to a discussion of having each have their own 24-hour, 7-day-a-week channel. And then as we move forward a few years, we had done some different things with the city of Huntsville, and it ventured into a discussion about having a memorandum of understanding to actually share this facility, and that's where we are today.
Yeah, and it seems to really make sense too, because the Huntsville City municipal government and Huntsville City School system work closely together, and you're engaged in activities of a public nature, and it just seems like it makes sense for those two entities to come together and provide the opportunity to produce programming and other kinds of things that can be beneficial to the community. I assume the partnership's working out okay so far.
Oh, I think it's been a great partnership. As you mentioned, there are a lot of things that both the City of Huntsville and the City School District have worked in partnership on, and I think that to look at a facility like this would be very, very, very difficult to start from scratch. Certainly, we had the foundation that was established in the 1960s, and what we have here today, you know, we're resting on the shoulders of others who did a lot of the hard work to get all of this started.
Yeah, and when you walk through the studio, you can actually see some of the relics of the past. I know that when you come into the lobby, there's an opportunity to see one of the old TV cameras that were used back in the day. You've moved from that period to a period now where it's really high tech. It's kind of like sitting in a fully, you know, organized room with all of these different electronic devices and ease of access and use. How has that journey changed what you're able to do?
Well, in the early period when this place was first established, they had a much, much bigger staff, and it required that to be able to operate all of the equipment. Certainly through the years, when you had downsizing in the economy and budget cuts, ETV was one of the many organizations that were affected by that, so the staff got really cut. So we only have, relatively speaking, about 1/4 of the staff that the place used to have. So that put a bit of a difficulty in doing some of the things we'd like to do. The technology, though, as it's improved, you can actually have one person in a control room with robotic cameras and a computer video switching system that can operate everything where it took 4 or 5 people before. So the technology is actually able to have us branch back out and to do a lot of things that maybe we once did many, many years ago. But now those resources and those advances just make it easy for a much smaller number of people to do a much bigger production.
And you're in a studio area that provides you with the opportunity to do some diverse things. You can have a public information show like this one is. You can have some sports reporting and some conversational types of things. You can have a lot of different options as it relates to what you're trying to do. And I know you're doing some interesting things right now. I just wonder, as you continue to move forward, are there some of those things that you perhaps would like to do that you're thinking about doing and certainly would like to see as a part of this operation here?
Well, one of the things that we recently acquired was a mobile satellite communications truck. Now, we actually built this in-house. We have a gentleman here who's our video operations manager, Jonathan Crow, who was sort of the Einstein behind this idea. And unlike conventional TV satellite trucks, for those people who don't know, it operates on something called a KU band. And typically you have a lot of different satellite companies that you actually purchase time from. So if they're actually live at another city or maybe another state. They actually go through a company and they can purchase times in maybe 5 or 10 minute blocks, for instance. And it's not cheap. So what we were able to do is we combined the satellite internet technology with broadcast streaming technology, merged those two together, and were able to come up with a vehicle that actually cost 1/5 of what a conventional satellite truck would cost and is much easier and simpler to operate. And the crux to this was being able to have a mobile communications vehicle in case we had a situation like we had in April of 2011 with the tornadoes where the city was off the grid for several days. That was something that the district had looked at and wanted to have available so that we could deal with an emergency situation as well. So that truck can be implored to give us emergency communications if we are completely left in the dark. So the reason for the truck gives us two purposes. If we'd built something that was just simply for emergency communications, well, it might get used once every 6 months. You have a training drill or something. It really would stay parked a lot. And with this resource, we can go out and do live events. And we've done a lot of sporting events with football, and we're venturing into basketball and other events. We've done things like groundbreakings that the school district has done. We've done some concerts and other special venues. And this truck literally means we can go anywhere, not just in the city, but we could go anywhere and bring that event live back to our station here and then out through the community through our cable channel. So from that aspect, that's one example of how the new emerging technology enables us to do more with less and actually give us a product that serves a dual purpose.
Yeah, I mean, that's really exciting. And just to see the various areas of life where technology really has allowed us to do so many more things is really exciting. And to know that that is actually being leveraged in this environment is a good thing too, which I know you're very excited about. You have 20 years of history at ETV. So if I were to ask you to name, 20 things that stand out in your mind in the process of that journey, we might need another 20 minutes or so. But I wonder if there's one thing, one or two things maybe that just kind of, in your memory kind of stands out in your experience being here, important moments, significant moments. I know you just mentioned the tornado of April 2011. That was a huge one for a lot of people. But just certain things that may have happened or experiences or people that may have come through here that just kind of stick out in your memory.
Well, we've had different guests through the years that have come through and have been interviewed. Certainly, local officials, if both of us have been involved with. We've had state officials. We've had some that have been, of a national recognition, and those are interesting in and of itself. But then we've had. If we look back through the archives, which is another process we're actually going through to get a special ready so that we can have for the summer of 2016 to broadcast. We actually sat down and did an interview just recently with the former director of educational TV, Hal Beach. And he actually was here and he worked as the production manager, the number 2 guy in charge when this place was opened up.
Wow.
And he describes this as being an empty shell. It was just an empty shell, and they had some chairs and a few desks that were set up here, and they had to start framing in and building the whole structure.
Wow.
And then, when we went to the process of having to rebuild, the thing that was really, really significant to us, and it was, as they say, as Dickens from the book, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. We had a fire in May of 2001, and we lost a lot of the archives. We basically had to gut this building and start off from scratch. So we still have the original frame and the flooring and everything, but we had to literally rebuild from scratch. So that took us basically from the spring of 2003 when we were able to open back up and start production again. So that gave us, a fresh new way to revitalize what we had. Certainly in a way that we would have never been able to do otherwise, but it's a horrible way to get there.
Yeah.
Because with all of the new equipment that you're able to put in, and you're able to maybe make a little better use of your existing floor plan, the archives you can't ever replace. So there were a lot of things that we lost.
Yeah.
Luckily, there were archives of film footage, because this facility, just like most news crews, shot on 16mm film. And there were a lot of things that were significant to the community and significant maybe to education that had been captured on that. So we're actually in the process now. Those were stored at a different location, actually down at the Mertz Center. So we've got those, and we're actually going to, it's a very time-consuming process, but we've got a way now to transfer that, and we're working to try to go through that and capture some of that. But there's some moments in Huntsville that we know that were on there. We had some historical significant events. Particularly one of the things that stands out is the celebration that took place in 1969 downtown after the moon landing. And we've got a good chunk of a speech that Wernher von Braun had made on the steps of the courthouse. Now, typically what's seen in a lot of documentaries and clips is they see the speech he gave when he was getting a send-off to Washington in 1970. This is when he'd been promoted and he was going to work in D.C. But this find was something that had not been seen probably in many, many years, that we didn't even know we had, and it had this speech of him there at the courthouse right after the moon landing. And oddly enough, one of the interesting things it shows about technology is you got this huge gathering around the courthouse, and what they do is they pause to play back the audio from the moon landing, the audio exchange, which in today's culture just sounds odd. I mean, you would have Jumbotron screens set up and you'd play video clips and everything. And here you've got this massive group that are sitting around listening to an audio clip piped through the loudspeakers around the courthouse. So it was, it puts in perspective about time and technology. But there are certainly moments like that we have. One of the things they did was a show that was called The World of Tomorrow. And it was envisioned by a gentleman at Boeing to showcase scientists and engineers and to have them make predictions of where they see technology and advancement in the next 25 years. And one of the guests for that program was Wernher von Braun.
Oh, wow.
And interestingly enough, we don't have that footage survived, but we do actually have his script from that program. And it was very interesting reading. A lot of the things that he had predicted actually did come true. So that and a lot of other shows that were produced. One of the things that kids remember, Grunches and Grins, which was a kid's show. Sarah McDarris, who was a storyteller, still around, and she was with the Huntsville Public Library, and they had a puppet, and they would have kids, and it would be like a little a story time. That was a show that was aired on a regular basis on Alabama Public Television. She did that show for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of history, a lot of community history.
It sounds like it, and of course with 50 years we could talk about so many more things, and of course our time is up, but we certainly will appreciate, have appreciated you being here talking with us today about all this great stuff. 2016 is a big year for ETV, the 50th anniversary, and there'll be lots more information coming down the pike for people. We want to thank our resident historian for today. He's none other than Keith Ward. He's Director of Communication of ETV and ETV. And we want to thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you for being a part of our broadcast, and we will see you on our next edition of the show. We hope that you'll like our Facebook page and also follow us on Twitter at Impact with Kenny Anderson. In the meantime, have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you soon.